Hello, everybody. I'm Conrad.
I'm Steven.
We're bringing you our first ever Crimson Blades Tactica edition. So we've got a few things we want to talk about today. First up is dicing it out. So you wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, so this is a term I came across reading into War Machine and Hordes and stuff. And my understanding of it is it's when you take a lot of infantry that has especially something like tough, and you just run them into a zone, and you hope that one of two things will happen. You'll hope, one, that just rolling enough dice, it'll average out, and you'll save a third of your troops, and you'll win the War of Attrition like that. And the other thing is rolling enough dice that, especially in a timed tournament, that you'll time out on all your turns and run the game long so it has a chance of ending by time necessarily more than caster kill or game length or something.
I know I'm kind of guilty of this. One of my favorite casters is Pete Ersk. I'm the jerk who brings, 50-something guys to a 50-point game. I think it's a valid strategy, personally.
But do you think it has any applications outside of War Machine then?
Just spamming bodies? I think so. I think most systems you can get away with spamming bodies. I mean, you probably won't kill as much, because I know with at least what I bring, it's cheap and it kills. I mean, playing guard, you can bring enough bodies to where they physically can't kill everybody by the end of the game.
So what about the dicing out aspect of it? Do you think that it is the tough save that makes them difficult to kill?
No, I think it's the amount of people, because the tough save is good, and it really does drag out the game, and it slows everybody down. But in the end, it's not really the tough save. It's definitely just the sheer volume of dudes.
So what do you think that means specifically for a game like 40K, since it, I think, is a little more reliant on saves as a whole than maybe in fantasy?
Well,
I'm going to tell you what I think, and then you can
tell me what you think. Yes.
I think a lot of people have been catching on to the fact that this whole re-rollable 2+ save business in 40K is a little bit silly. I know here locally the cage match was won by somebody that was running the Flying Circus. At least when I played him, he had 2+ saves that he could re-roll on all of his Demon Princes. And I know Las Vegas Open was won by somebody running Seer Council, although if I remember right, they FAQ'd it so that it's a 2+ and then the reroll is only a 4+, but still was running the Seer Council with the 2-up armor, 2-up cover, 2-up invuln save, with Fortune to reroll it all.
That 2-up save. I've played a lot of war games, but I've never been as happy when I finally, got Baron, when he had his little rerollable 2-up save.
That's true. I mean, I think when you're talking about averages, I mean, a save that you only fail 1/36 of the time means that 10 models require 360 wounds to be allocated to them before you can kill them.
Yeah.
Which is a lot. So what about in fantasy? Do you think there's any point in Warhammer Fantasy where...
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, playing against you, I know that the troop spam is a thing. Because I've been stuck in combat with slaves for days.
And sometimes they kill things.
Sometimes. I mean, but when I bring the skeletons, everyone kills the skeletons. It's definitely a strategy. Whether it's one of the better ones, I'm not sure. Because there's things that will just nuke slaves.
But I think in all three cases what we're talking about is armies that take advantage of kind of the averages of the dice, right?
Yeah.
Because if you bring enough guys in War Machine, if you can bring 3 guys to every one that somebody else is bringing, then on average you'll be able to hit them and kill them. And
yeah.
In 40K, if your saves are better, on average you'll be able to make enough. And in Fantasy, if I have enough clan rats, on average I'll be able to wound and kill some things.
And I think that comes down to ultimately what these games are. They're a game of averages, numbers, and dice, where you kind of need to be on the up and up when it comes to math to really take full advantage of that.
But don't you think sometimes that replaces strategy and movement things if I can rely on averages on my dice?
I think so. But it'll only get you so far, I mean, remember, we go back to our cage match. You brought your rerollable 2-up invuln saves. I mean, yeah, they were good, but you didn't get that far.
The second one.
Yeah. Or, when it comes down to the last turn, all that's left is Vect and Eldrad. Yeah.
Yep. So next up on my agenda of things to talk about today is rerolls.
Why they're good?
So if you've seen, I guess what may be uploaded after this, if you've seen one of our more recent bat reps where I was playing Mordekar, I talked a little bit about in War Machine Hordes, Scorn has a model now that can allow any allied model to reroll one or more dice on an attack or a damage roll. And when I first read that ability, it seemed okay. And after watching some people pull off some really clutch assassinations with it, or use it just to ensure that their spells are going to hit, I really became convinced that being able to reroll not just the dice in general, but any number of the dice you want on attack and damage rolls can be really game-changing.
I get what you're saying. Rerolls are huge because, I mean, it's not like 40k where, you know, you're throwing like 10, 15, 20 attacks into one thing.
Right.
You might at best get like 5 guys on one model that's going to take more than 5 attacks to kill. And you want to get those rerolls to where you do the damage to take it down. And rerolls are, I think they're one really good way going about doing this. I mean, I can see why they're the best. Why you think they're the best model in Scorn, because you get the rerolls. That's what you got. I mean, other armies just get additional dice. They get, you know, things like Signs Importance, where you get the slight up to your averages on what you're rolling. You know.
But I think something about the rerolls and things about like Signs Importance is I think it mitigates some of the random factor of dice. If I can be sure that if I roll a 1, I have the chance to reroll it, there's less of a chance. I mean, we've all rolled 3 dice and rolled 3 1s and been disappointed and thought what a statistical anomaly that is shortly before we throw the dice across the room and say other nasty things about it. But because that's such a rare event, being able to reset and roll again whenever a rare event like that happens that we weren't counting on happening, I think really boosts a lot of that gameplay centered around average dice rolls kind of to its peak.
I think so. That's true.
So when do you think rerolls are appropriate then in wargaming?
I think each game takes its own stance on rerolls. I mean, War Machine, yeah, they're far and few in between. But games like 40k and Fantasy, I know when I'm hitting someone in close combat with my Empire, I'm pretty much always rerolling everything. And its impact, I feel it's felt more in War Machine than it is in 40k or Fantasy. Because, like you were saying, they are a bit more clutch.
Do you think some of that, too, is because they're a more rare occurrence in War Machine? Do you think the game itself is not necessarily built for rerolls as much?
No, not really. I definitely agree with you on that. I mean, rerolls, any spell that, you know, increases your likelihood of doing something that's difficult, I think it's really good. I mean, good things are good, right?
Yeah. So where do you think the line is then between rerolls being good and rerolls being too good? Is it the magical rerolling 2+ saves, or?
I think 2 pluses symbolize something it's almost guaranteed, but you have that 1 in 6 chance, or, you know, the Snake Eyes edition of War Machine Hordes, you have the 1 in 36 chance of something just going horribly wrong. And I feel like that adds a bit of realism to it, you know?
Right. I mean, I can't tell you probably more than 5 and less than 20 games where I've been playing my Skaven. You know, there's a rerolling 10 leadership's really good until somebody shoots your Crazier the first turn with a Hell Cannon and he fails and runs off the board.
Yeah. I
mean, it still happens. It's not like you can ever completely eliminate the chance of
definitely
bad rolling.
So
our next topic is going to be analyzation of threats.
All right. So first up, we're going to talk a little bit about War Machine. So the big thing about War Machine, it's all about threat ranges and positioning. You know, getting your guys to where you know you're going to hit them before they can hit you. I know playing Kador, however you want to pronounce it, I can dominate the speed game, and I can pretty much always put someone to where they will be productive next turn, because I like bringing the bodies. What about Scorn, Steve?
Well, I think with Scorn it's a lot the same. I think there's definitely, I mean, you need models in certain positions. You need models to stay safe because we have a lot of synergy going on in the faction, and sometimes if you can just pick off one key model, that really neuters a lot of the strategy for units. Like if you kill the beast handlers, all of a sudden the beasts are kind of hurting for it and stuff. But I wanted to bring up the point. I don't know. I've seen people be pretty picky about where they put models in 40k or fantasy, in particular about facings and stuff. But I don't know that I've ever seen anybody be quite as picky as they are in War Machine about exactly where some models are set down, because those threat ranges are so crucial.
Line of sight issues.
And line of sight issues.
I need to make sure this guy is hiding right behind this guy so you can't see him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I heard an interesting comment a while back, also about threat ranges and positioning. There was some discussion going on about, in particular, Scorn casters versus other factions casters, and someone was making the comment that Scorn really suffers in a way from not having an Epic Haley or a Denegra or a Epic Morvana or some caster like that who has some ability just to overwhelm your enemy, and that there's, and I quote, nothing broken in Scorn, to which one of their Scorn players quickly corrected them by talking about the fact that, for those of you that don't know, with P. Makeda, Moloch Karn can walk 13 inches, hit a bunch of stuff, and then walk 13 inches back, almost ad nauseum until you can catch him and finally kill him.
I know I've been hit with a Moloch missile plenty of times.
Well, and that kind of a threat range is sort of absurd in War Machine, I think.
mean, but you see, you have those threat ranges.
Right.
And I think for every Moloch missile, you've got, like, my heat-seeking Iron Fang pikemen. I mean, you've seen them fly across the board.
That's true.
And just reach out and touch somebody. I think every army has at least that one thing that can really just overwhelm your opponents. I mean, Breath of Corruption on Rasheth, that's annoying. I'll tell you right now, I'm playing my one-hit wonders. I hate it.
Well, and I think one of the interesting things about War Machine 2 is you talk about you have these guys that are fast and all this, and that Breath of Corruption is a problem. And I think one of the problems is because there are no saves, there's no defensive measures necessarily other than tough in War Machine. If a model's out of position, it's probably dead.
Yes and no. There's definitely ways to increase the survivability of your models. Like on a Warcaster can't focus, put some spells on some lone dudes.
Right.
And then, of course, there is a thing of, if I move him maybe half an inch back, you can't get to him. And he can probably get to you if you move up at all. It's definitely more about threat ranges and positioning than anything else.
Well, let's talk about then how we analyze threats in 40k, how that compares to a War Machine.
You really want me to talk about this?
I really do. I want another opinion.
My Helldrakes fly over you, and they vector strike you, and they kick you, and then they torrent you, Demon Forge, and then the Night Sides shoot you. I think...
how difficult is it for you to get Helldrakes and Night Sides in range of what you want them to be in range of?
If my opponent is coming to me, like they probably are, it's not that hard. But if the opponent is playing smart, it can be pretty tricky. I mean, if you spread your guys out in the right way, I'm going to have some serious issues getting to them.
So then what do you think about... Do you think there's any positioning in 40k? Or do you think...
I mean, there's definitely positioning. But it definitely comes down more to cover saves, whether I get them or you get them, whose is better, Or if your armies that don't care about cover saves, oh well.
So do you think that compares at all to, like you're talking about, camping focus on a caster, or putting spells on a unit to make them difficult to kill? Do you think being aware of what kind of saves you'll be getting mirrors that, and being able to put people out of position knowing that they'll be okay? Or
I think so, but I don't think the positioning is as important in 40k as it is in War Machine. Because one thing with ranges, it's definitely, skewed in the up with 40k. Because, I mean, shooting guns that have a 72-inch range, as long as you can see who you're shooting at, you'll be fine.
Well, and two, I think there's some difference between... I know I find myself a lot in War Machine and Horde saying, how can I make sure, specifically my caster but other models, don't die? And 40k, a lot of times I find myself asking, where can I put this model so that he can shoot at that thing? And then my second question becomes, how safe is he going to be if I put him there?
Yeah. No, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think it comes down to experience, knowing. I mean, we've all made the mistake of, yeah, they're Space Marines. They can take the hit.
Or, yeah, he's Epic Xerus. He's got some fury on him.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
But, so what about fantasy then? How do you think fantasy compares in terms of analyzing threats as the game's going on?
I think it does come down to positioning. And the way I feel, at least, I feel the game is one of the movement phase. Because if you can get your army somewhere where your opponent can't react to it, or they have to play on your terms, something like that, you'll definitely be in a very advantageous position.
So I know you play Empire and have some knights sometimes. Do you ever find yourself thinking, wow, my knights have a 2-up armor save. I can get into any combat they want and they'll be okay?
No. I mean, I feel like the knights are good. Don't get me wrong. I love my knights. They kill things dead. It's just I wouldn't haphazardly throw them into anything. Because, I mean, if let's say I throw them into Skaven Slaves, they'll be there all game.
Right.
I mean, between the 10 of them, yeah, they'll be there a while. Or I wouldn't throw them against things like Bestigor, because they won't be there for long, you know?
It's true.
I mean, there's definitely a way you use them, and it's to give you that extra push to win something, you know? Like, they're a bit better when they come in on the flank. You can't really, you know, bring your full might against them, and they swing that combat in your favor.
Well, and I think another thing that's different about fantasy, I have a friend who has made the comment, he does this in War Machine, but I don't think it's really a tactic that dominates that game. And I've done it a couple of times in 40k, but again, I think it's more of a corner case, is trying to redirect somebody and trying to give somebody a target that you know they want to take to force them to making a bad move.
I know it's a valid thing in fantasy. I mean, especially when, you know, you park those 5 dire wolves right in front of one unit. It's like, well...
Or being able to flee. Being able
Yeah.
to say, if you charge this unit, I know I'm not going to win combat, so I'd rather just run away.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really have that in any of the systems. I mean, and I agree with you that it is somewhat prevalent in War Machine. Because sometimes you do put that one thing out there. It's like, oh man, I really want that Warjack dead, so I'm going to send my other Warjack after your Warjack. Oh look, now your Warjack's way in front of everything. I'm just going to beat it up with my guys.
But do you think that's something a lot of people do, is willingly sacrifice a model?
Not a lot of people will do that, but some people will. Like, I know I throw my Spriggan into something, knowing it's going to die, just to draw something out. Because at the end of the day, I think everything is just a means to an end when it comes to miniatures games. Because they're all tools in your greater toolbox of getting the job done.
Sweet.
All right.
Well, let's spend a minute recapping what we've got going on down here. So today was a games day for the Fantasy Escalation League.
Yeah, we got some things we want to talk about. First of all, we've got some new players who are picking up the game. 3 of them, actually. So, we've got 2 Dark Elf players and a Warrior Chaos player. 3 very fun armies to play against.
Well, 2 armies.
Well, okay. I agree with you there that there are 2 army books in these 3 armies. All right, so I know one of the players. He likes shooting things, and having played him, I think 3 times now in fantasy, he's definitely improved a lot when it comes to, you know, knowing rules and some strategy. He's getting there. He's definitely a lot better than he used to be. We also have a new player who today was her second game, and after a little bit of advice, she was able to pretty much table Steven.
I have 2 characters left.
Yeah,
For ogres, that's a lot.
Yeah, that was half your army. And let's see, who else? And our warrior player, who, I remember him remarking to me when I played him for the first time that it was the first time his warriors had ever gotten to combat, and he was finally able to see what they do when they get there. He was pretty impressed, and he understands now why they don't get into combat when people have something to say about it.
Well, I think one comment I'd like to make, not necessarily related to the fantasy league, but just the topic of kind of learning how to play a game, is sometimes it's fun to pick up a new army or a new system and learn how to play. I mean, we've talked about the differences kind of between the three systems, and you know, now playing ogres instead of Skaven or beastmen is totally different because I don't feel like I've ever had a unit. I mean, with beastmen, I've had units that are good, and then you buff them with magic and they win combat. With ogres, there's kind of this mentality of I have a unit and it's going to kill everything that it touches, and that's just going to be the end of it, which is sort of fun to have kind of a point-and-click unit because Skaven certainly don't operate that way, and beastmen require kind of a Rube Goldberg machine of events to be able to operate that way.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, playing Empire, because I'm going the opposite way. You know, having that one thing that will just pretty much annihilate everything it touches is fun. But sometimes you want to have that Rube Goldberg machine where, okay, I need the stars to align. All right, I'm re-rolling 2 pluses to hit and 2 pluses to wound with 30 attacks. Take that. I mean, it's fun getting out of your element and trying new things.
Well, I feel like I've learned some things about the game
Oh, yeah. No,
playing a
totally.
different army. Which brings me to my next point. How do you teach someone to play a game?
So, Steven is our fantasy guru. If you're our fantasy guru, the closest thing we have to our fantasy guru. So usually when someone comes up, hey, you know, I have this question about rules, they'll ask Steven. So Steven was playing a game today, and 2 of our newer players, who this was, I don't know, one of their newer games at 1,000 points. I think both of them were playing their second game at 1,000 points, but They had a question about something, and they would constantly ask Steven, you know, hey, you know, what does this do? It got to the point where I was like, you know, Steven's trying to teach someone else how to play, I'll go babysit them. And with their questions, I was finally able to realize, hey, I understand this game a lot better than I thought I did.
But how do you... one of the things I've really been struggling with, especially with fantasy, is trying to explain the way armor saves work. I mean, I feel like I understand how they work. I mean, I feel like it's a pretty simple, it gets better or worse by 1, but I do think it's kind of a strange concept to think about strength of hits being somehow related to modifying armor saves. And
I think so too. I mean, everyone definitely has that one thing that appears to them to be strange in a war game. Like, I know when I started playing War Machines, I could not comprehend how you could not see 3 inches out of a forest. There's like 3 trees there.
big bushes.
Yeah, big bushes. But, I mean, it's something that you sit there and you think about it. Like, you think about it a little more, and then eventually you get it, you know? It takes some thought and some getting used to. Because, I mean, it's one small thing.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think another thing that's pretty important to learning how to play. A while back, I was teaching a friend how to play War Machine because he had tried to get into the game and had kind of been beaten out of it by some more experienced players that were running some pretty
cheese-tastic lists.
Yeah, pretty harsh lists to teach someone how to play against. And one of the comments, well, first off, so the first game we ever played together, about halfway through the game, I realized that he didn't really understand what was going on at all. I ended up walking him through how to get to my caster and kill him over the next couple of turns, which he certainly wasn't in a position to do before I explained it to him and walked him through it. And so I think one thing that's really important about when you're teaching someone to play is realizing that you're potentially going to have to take a hit when if you're teaching them how to play well, they ought to be beating you. Because nobody really likes you're going to explain how to do something up to a point, and then all of a sudden what you've been teaching them leads them into this trap that you've been setting the whole time. I think that's discouraging and kind of mean. So what about building up a new army? I know you had a fantasy army before this. I've had 2 fantasy armies before this, and now we're working on building up a second and third army for the league.
So, I think what it comes down to is we've both gotten pretty used to playing our armies, and we want to play something else. You know, we kind of know the ins and outs, how everything works. I know the reason I picked up Empire is because it's kind of like Vampire counts, but not really, because you have the guys, you have the magic, you don't have the super killy Lord of Doom standing there making sure you win the game. I think it comes a bit more down to skill, and that's why I wanted to pick up an army that, did take a bit more skill, but didn't take the amount of skill it does take to play Beastmen or something like that.
Well, I agree, and I mean, one of the reasons I picked ogres is because I think they're funny, and I think they're different. And I'd like to really commend, I think, just about everybody in the league, but there's a few players I can think of specifically that, picking up their first army, and this is the same way I got into fantasy. They decided that they really liked something. Like one of our players, every game he plays, and every time we talk about fantasy, he talks about how much he loves Warriors of Chaos and the way that they look and getting them into combat, and has really just been happy putting Warriors of Chaos on the table, marching them straight forwards towards whatever they can fight, and trying to fight it and kill it in a very
Chaosy way.
And I think that's what makes that army special for him.
Yeah.
And I think I realize it can be frustrating to play against, but that's what got me into the game was kind of the mentality of playing a Skaven army where you've got all these guys that just are cannon fodder and go out there and get blown up in sometimes hilarious and silly ways. Well, you have one rat that's kind of in charge of everybody running around in the back somewhere trying to keep things under control and keep the game going in your favor. And I think that's what's important to focus on when you're building up a new army, is not how much sense maybe your list makes, although I do think that's important, is trying to focus on what makes it special or different to you.
Yeah. What makes you want to play that army?
Right. So what about working towards the final product? So while we're building up our armies, I mean, potentially in the end of this, we're going to have a tournament at 2,500 points. And how are you keeping in mind the fact that what you're adding week by week and what you're getting is going to eventually become some part of some grand final product?
So I had an idea for a final build in my army. I mean, if you've watched the 2,500 point game that we posted, that's kind of a vague idea of what it is. But as I put that army on the table to play league games, I realized, hey, this one thing works a bit better than this other thing I had in mind. Like you figure out what works and what doesn't. Personally, I probably am going to end up dropping the knights because I don't feel like they work. There's definitely things that will work better, like 50 free company.
Right.
Yeah. I think the league definitely gives us a chance to do a trial by error of what we think will be good. And we've definitely both been proven wrong. Hey, I think this one thing is going to be great, and then it doesn't work.
I'm always right.
Those Vestigor can do it. I believe in them.
So I guess let's talk really quick about some upcoming events.
All right, so March 1st, we've got a Fantasy Games Day up in Birmingham. It's Excelsior, isn't it?
Yep.
All right. March 15th, we've got a Steamroller in Tuscaloosa, Alabama at Crimson Castle. And what day is that last one?
Sunday. So March 2nd.
March 2nd, we've got Kill Team Escalation League.
Which is going to be the kickoff to a 40K Escalation League.
Yes.
To dovetail behind my Fantasy League.
Yep. All right, so I guess message us if you're interested in any of these events. We'll get you directed towards the officiating official. All right.
So once again,
thanks for watching, everybody.